This is my Dream 223 trainer build. We're talking about the rifle I'm basing this off of, components, end-to-end building process, tools, and a preview of what I'm going to shoot through this rifle, loading components, and more. All that in this video. Gavin here from UltimateReloader.com. Before we get into the 223 trainer build, it's important for me to talk about this rifle right here. This is my full custom 6-dasher rifle I built right here on the channel. You're going to want to check out those videos. This is the most accurate rifle I've ever built. It's the most accurate rifle that I own. During the load development process, I was able to put 5 shots into a .090 inch group. This thing is an absolute tack driver. It's built on the BAT TR action. I've got a benchmark 5-groove barrel, cut rifling. I've got a benchmark tactical brake. This is Manners T2A gap stock with an Area 419 Arca lock, weighted rail system, Trigger Tech Diamond Remington 700 trigger. Totally killer package. This is absolutely my best shooting rifle, and it's set up just how I like it. Using this as a starting point, a lot of guys that compete, say in PRS matches, they build a 223 trainer version of their rifle. That could be a barrel that they screw on, and you're going to either need a bolt or a bolt head to swap out as well. It could be a complete barreled action, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to also top it with a separate optic, so all I have to do is drop the barreled action in, boom, off and running. You could also build out a complete rifle and then have both to shoot at all times. It's all a matter of your personal preference. My goal with this build, get my 223 trainer set up as close as possible to this 6-dasher rifle. And we're going to be able to accomplish that with the components that I've selected. For this build, we're using a lot of the same components. We've got the BAT TR action. What's cool about this action is it's got the modular bolt. We could get a front half section here and swap it out and have a different bolt face so that we can use the same action for different cartridges that have different case rims. In this particular case, I've got a dedicated action with a dedicated bolt with a 223 bolt face. Totally awesome. This action is bench rest quality. It's for tactical applications. I absolutely love it. It is well worth the money. The action is really the heart of the rifle. We're going to put on another Trigger Tech Diamond Remington 700. I'm going to set it at about 7 ounces, just like I've got this rifle set up. I want the same exact trigger, the same exact trigger pull weight, so that when I'm using the 223 trainer, I'm really emulating what I'm going to have with the 6-dasher. We've got another benchmark cut rifled barrel blank. These are absolutely super, super premium. These are handcrafted. The guys at Benchmark absolutely have it down to an absolute, I would say, science and craft. This is 224 5-groove, 24-inch finished length, and we've got 1-in-8 twist on this and an M24 profile. Totally killer setup for this 223 trainer. I've got an MDT AICS magazine that's going to work. It's designed specifically for 223. And for muzzle devices, I've got a couple things I'm going to play with. We've got the new Area 419 Hellfire Match Brake. This is a bit of overkill, but I can't wait to try this out. I'm going to try it on this rifle. Also, since we're going to thread at 5/8-24, I've got the Omega 300 from Silencer Co. I'll probably do quite a bit of suppressed shooting with it as well. We'll have a complete barreled action with optic. We'll be able to drop it right into this Manners T2A gap and be off and running in just minutes. Now that will be awesome. So let's talk tools and machinery. This is going to be the first bolt action chambering job that I will perform on my new Precision Matthews TL1660 lathe. This is a super heavy duty, super high precision, all Taiwanese made lathe. It runs like a dream. I cannot wait to do this chambering job with it. I splurged for an Aloris CXA made in USA tool post quick change system. It came with a bunch of tooling. I've got all my inserts. This is going to be a really exciting build. This lathe runs super smooth. It's got a lot of mass. It weighs about double what the PM1440 GT weighs that I also still use. So it's going to be really, really interesting to compare the two. from Straight Shot Gunsmithing, I'm using the True Bore alignment system. This is a special 6-jaw chuck that articulates. You can change the angle and you can change the radial positioning on it. You can dial in that portion of the bore to get it exactly where you want it to be, and it is clamped very securely. It's really a great system. And then we're also going to use the SSG range rod system to get it indicated and to get it all dialed in perfectly. For the reamer and gauge from Dave Manson, so I started the discussion with him saying, hey, you know, I want to use Berger's 77 grain OTM bullet. I feel like that'd be the perfect tactical bullet to use for like PRS training and that kind of thing. If I was going to shoot in the tactical class, it'd be a great competition load. And he said, okay, well, the reamer I would suggest would be our full bore reamer. I've got the print right here. If you click on that first link in the video description and go over to the article, I'll have a PDF copy of this. This geometry should work really good with this particular bullet when we cut this particular chamber. And then I've got a Manson 223 go gauge. Where's the no-go gauge? Well, I'm going to use the Gordy Gritters tape trick. We'll add 0.02 of an inch to the length, and we'll have that precise control over our headspace. So for this job, we're sparing no expense on tooling and equipment. We're using top-notch stuff. So let's talk ammunition and components and reloading. So as I mentioned, I'm really using the Berger 77 grain OTM tactical bullet to really optimize this rifle build around, you know, the chamber geometry, and I even have the new Berger 77 OTM factory ammunition. So we're going to be able to shoot what Berger has put together as an ideal load. I've also got Lapua 223 Remington brass, and I talked to the folks over at Forster. They can hone a full-length sizer die with just the right neck sizing built into that die. So I took some measurements with a ball micrometer, a tubing micrometer, to get the neck thickness for this Lapua brass. I sent it to them. They honed out the full-length sizer, and this is something where you could send in your Forster die. They can do that for you. You can order it that way. I also have the ultra micrometer seeder, which is one of my absolute favorite seeding dies. I'll probably crank out a bunch of the ammunition for this rifle on the coax while I'm doing load development, and if I'm going for that ultra kind of precision result. So pretty excited about the reloading for it. It's really great this time to have factory ammunition to break in the rifle with and to get some initial results, compare my loads with. So with all of that background information out of the way, it's time to get started on the build. Well, here it is. This is the completed 223 trainer. You can see down here, we've got the 6-dasher barreled action. The 223 trainer barreled action is installed in the Manners T2A gap stock. This thing shoots absolutely amazing. This rifle is the answer to all of your 223 problems. More about that towards the end of the video. Let's talk about the rifle barrel machining and chambering process. So, like I mentioned, I've got a Benchmark M24 contour 1-in-8 twist 224 barrel blank. I mounted the blank in the 6-jaw chuck that's a part of the True Bore alignment system and proceeded to dial in the barrel. The goal with dialing in the barrel is when the machine is running, when the spindle is rotating, the lands and the grooves, the bore is running perfectly true. It's not doing this and it's not doing that. And with an indicator and a bunch of precise dialing procedures, True Bore alignment system makes this very straightforward. We can get that so that there's less than 1/10,000th of an inch of wobble. And basically I'm using this SSG range rod, which has got spots for 2 pilot bushings on here. One that's going to go inside the bore and one that's going to sit right out towards the end. I have a bushing set that goes in 2/10,000th of an inch increments, and that means it's very possible to fit this SSG range rod with very, very little movement in terms of the slop of the bushings on the shafts. And basically, what you're going to do is you're going to kind of angle the chuck system so that it's perfectly straight as you run the indicator, and you're going to rotate the chuck 90 degrees, and then you're going to do the other 2 adjustments so that you've got no wobble like this to start with. And since it's straight, it might have a little bit of a motion like this, and you can use the radial adjustment screws to dial that completely out. And then when you spin the barrel in the lathe on that indicating rod, you can see that you've got very, very little run out, near zero. Okay, now we're ready to go on to actually turning the tenon and chambering the barrel. Okay, so before we start cutting metal, there's some very important dimensions that we need to record. Also note that I can't show you everything here on YouTube because of YouTube policy. Okay, so the important dimensions, some are with the bolt alone, some are with the bolt installed in the action, and then we've got some with the reamer. So we're looking here at things like the bolt nose diameter. We're looking at things like the depth from the receiver face to the front of the locking lugs. And from those dimensions, we can put together a build sheet like this one. This is the format that I got from Gordy Gritter's class. And this allows me to specify exactly what I want for bolt nose clearance, for end play, and so on and so forth. And those dimensions very closely matched what BAT provided with their standard tenon print. Then I took the reamer and took measurements of the shoulder diameter. And I took a piece of brand new Lapua brass and I looked at what kind of depth do I want to pre-drill to just short of the shoulder. So I'm subtracting 1 200,000ths from that base to shoulder length, and then I'm subtracting 30 to 40 thousandths of an inch off of what the shoulder diameter is so that there's room for that reamer to come in and perfectly cut everything. So I've got all of that down on paper. The barrel's already installed and indicated in the lathe. It's time to drill that hole. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, but you're going in there, you're drilling out the rifling, stop at exactly the right point, and then go in with a boring bar and clean all that up. Because when the reamer does go in for that chambering job, it's gonna ride on the surface of that hole, and if the hole isn't running perfectly true, you're gonna see that reflected in your chamber, which you definitely don't want. Okay, so now it's time to cut the tenon. I faced the end of the barrel blank. I turned the tenon down to diameter, which is 1 1/16, minus a couple thousandths, as specified on the tenon print, for 1 1/16 by 18 threads. We're making our way towards that. So I cut the thread relief, I cut the other relief on the other side of where the threads are. I turned the counterbore, and all while I'm really enjoying this new MagExact Precision Matthews DRO. I can get down to 1/10,000th of an inch on diameter. Really, really good precise control. I checked that with my Mitutoyo precision measurement tooling, and everything was lining up really, really nicely. Then it was time to turn those 18 thread per inch threads. Shifters on this lathe make it really easy to get into the right, threading pitch. And I put a bit of die chem on that portion of the tenon, made about a 2,000th deep pass, chucked it with a thread gauge, and I was good to go. So now I'm making successive passes, and I'm just really liking the thread finish that I'm seeing. This rigid lathe just does a super good job with surface finish kind of across the board. And as I'm getting down to the appropriate depth with the threads, I'm starting to screw on the rifle action. I like to get it so that as I'm approaching full thread engagement, as in right when I'm about to bump into the shoulder, I have just the tiniest of rattle. And that's because you don't want your threads to be bearing on each other. You don't want a tight thread fit, but you also don't want it overly loose. I got it absolutely perfect. This is just the joy of being able to cut your own threads. So at this point, we've got our counterbore, we've got our threads, we had our thread relief, we've got our shoulder. We're ready to cut the chamber. For this, I'm using a Grattan reamer holder that I've modified with this bar so that I can watch with a dial indicator to see what my depth is as I'm chambering. I've also got a MT3 to MT4 sleeve because this lathe has a larger tailstock spindle. We've got the Manson reamer with the piloted bushing. I've got just the right bushing in. That bushing fit is important if you want to prevent chatter as you're getting in. So I started with about 50 thousandths, took a 1,000th indicator, and spun the barrel in the lathe to make sure that I didn't have chatter. I did see ever so slight chatter. So I took the boring bar and took another boring bar pass, confirmed that that was completely clean at that point, and then took another 50 and another 50. Okay, at this point I'm seeing zero run out, zero reamer chatter, really liking what I'm seeing. So I proceed to take passes at 100 thousandths of an inch several times. Each time I'm withdrawing the reamer, I'm cleaning off the reamer, I'm blowing the chips out of the chamber, I'm applying more Viper's venom to the reamer and into the bore, and then continuing. Every once in a while, I'm checking for reamer chatter. Eventually, each time I'm taking a few passes and cleaning things out, I'm checking my depth with the go gauge. I know the go gauge will recess ever so slightly from the end of the tenon, so that gives me a relative depth. And then when I get within about 20 thousandths of an inch, I screw on the rifle action, put the go gauge in the bolt, close it, and then as I'm tightening it down, when the go gauge bottoms against the shoulder in the chamber, you get how much you have left to go as the gap between the recoil lug, the front face of the receiver, and the barrel shoulder. And you can actually check this with feeler gauges to get a real precise indication of exactly where you're at. During the chambering process, this time, for the very first time, I tried out this new setup. This is a Teslong NTG 100P Borescope. This is for pistols, but it's the perfect length for looking into chambers while they're being cut. I've got this mounted with a custom nylon bushing that I machined on the lathe. This is an Aloris CXA tool holder for a boring bar. It works great. You drop it in, you run it into the chamber area after cleaning it out, and what that allows you to do is spin the spindle. You're spinning the barrel, and you're able to inspect the chamber, the neck area, and most importantly, the throat. So in the chamber area, we're looking for things like scoring and scratching, things like that. In the throat area, we're confirming that that throat is cutting perfectly on center. If we haven't indicated the barrel correctly, or if we're having a reamer bushing issue, we could see a little bit of a zigzag as we rotate the spindle when we see the throat transition lines going by, right where that rifling engagement happens. And as you can see in this footage, we had perfect alignment. Everything was spinning really nicely and kind of in a straight line. Great way to validate while you're chambering. So I kept performing successive passes until I got down to 5 thousandths of an inch. And then it was 2 thousandths of an inch. And I'm down to 1 thousandth of an inch. And at this point, I have to start thinking about crush. When you tighten the action onto the barrel in your barrel vise, things compress. And you have to account for that about thousandth and a half of crush. So I know I want the handle to go down on the go gauge in the end. So I put a piece of Scotch tape on the end. That's 2 thousandths of an inch. I chambered it so that the bolt handle would just barely go down at go plus 2 thousandths of an inch. If I pull, 1 thousandth and a half of crush when I tighten the barrel on the action, that means I have a total of a 1/2 thousandth of an inch beyond the go gauge, which is just perfect. So, but you have to wait until we check Headspace to confirm that. Before pulling the barrel out of the lathe, after doing the chambering, I broke the entrance to the chamber by cutting a 45 angle cut about 20 thousandths on each side, and then textured the inside of the chamber with 320 grit paper on a wooden dowel. That's kind of the standard treatment I like to do before finishing a chamber job. Removed it from the 6-jaw chuck, flipped it around, indicated the barrel again, parted off 2 inches, double checked my indication. Now I'm down to this 24 inches finished barrel length. Then I did my standard 5/8 24 muzzle threading. The way this thing turned out, like jewelry. Let me just tell you, working with this class of lathe is an absolute joy. It is so precise. It is so rigid. It does such good surface finish. I'm just really, really happy with it. It's very satisfying. So after the muzzle was threaded and after I confirmed the thread fit, I removed the barrel from the lathe and I proceeded to check the headspace. Now this is always this moment where you hope everything comes together with sheer perfection. And it did. I torqued the action onto the barrel at about 95 foot-pounds. I still had the tape on the back of my go gauge. The handle did not go down. I took the tape off. The handle did go down. That means I'm right where I want to be. Total satisfaction. Another thing I wanted to give you a quick sneak peek of is my 50-watt fiber laser. This is an engraving machine to engrave things like the cartridge specification, the twist rate, and branding right there on the barrel. This thing works absolutely awesome, and it's taking my rifle builds to the next level. What's more exciting than checking your headspace? Firing the rifle for the first time and seeing how it's going to perform. It's hard to describe if you haven't built a rifle, but it's just something you anticipate. It's a very exciting process. So I mounted the Leupold Mark V HD. That's what I was using with the 6-dasher. I got my Berger 77 grain OTM factory ammo loaded up, put everything in my side-by-side, and attempted to drive up to the shooting range. Well, we have gotten a lot of snow here, and I only made it about halfway up the hill. So I actually had to hike my stuff up, dropped the rifle, and took the other way to the backstop, put my targets up, took the rifle and the rest of the stuff to the L1 shooting range. That's what we call this particular shooting area. I had to ditch my tripod, so I set the camera up on the rifle rack. I mean, we're talking about totally ad-libbing here, but I did use my Sinclair rest. I used my synthetic bag rider that I have for the front bag. I know that works well with this rifle. I took my first shot. I did a cleaning, took another shot, cleaned again, and then took another shot and cleaned again. And let me tell you, when you see the first 3 rounds through the rifle go into, let's just check this real quick. When you see that go into .223, that's these shots right here, you know that you're onto something good. So I proceeded to do the next 3 shots, cleaning between those 3 shots as well. Very similar group size. Then I took another 3 shots. This time I was getting the rifle sighted in just a little bit better. Very similar group. And then I actually dialed the wrong way. I was going to get it completely zeroed. It's all the way down here. Group opened up just a little bit. I had a bit of mirage going at that particular point. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've got 12 rounds through the rifle at this point, and it's time for my first 5-shot group. Again, all this with this factory ammunition. So I took the next 5 shots sequentially, and then they went into this group down here. This group measures .222 inches for 5 shots. So we are breaking in the barrel. We're using factory ammunition, and we've got sub-quarter minute results. You get a sense of this as you're shooting the rifle. It's just going exactly the same place each time. And with this rifle, it just makes it easy. Not a lot of recoil to deal with. A total pleasure to shoot. My Trigger Tech Remington 700 diamond trigger is set at 6.8 ounces. Life is good. So this story is taking a bit of a different turn. What I was expecting was use factory ammunition and then fine-tune the accuracy of those results, you know, to see what I'm going to need to do to get the accuracy I want. Well, I've definitely got the accuracy I need, especially for a trainer. This is totally ridiculous, but I'll take it. I'll take it any day. What I need to do next is to see what kind of standard deviation and extreme spread I have on my velocity. Because if we're shooting this guy out to 1,000 yards, for instance, we're going to need a pretty consistent velocity with the 223 because we're going to be pushing things. We're going to be pushing it really far, and I expect to do a lot of shooting at 600 and 700 yards with it. So the big question is, with this factory ammunition, is what is that SD and this ES going to be? And that's where our hand loads can come in. Either we'll duplicate this load to duplicate the accuracy and the velocity consistency, or we'll take a little bit of a different turn. Maybe we'll discover we need better velocity consistency and work that maybe put the EC tuner brake on, who knows? There's a lot of things that we can do with this, but what I've got to say is mission accomplished. I'm super happy with this rifle. I can't wait to shoot it more, can't wait to load for it with my Forester Hone die and ultramicrometer cedar on the coax. It's gonna be awesome. Here's my question to you. What do you think of this 223 trainer? Is this something you want to train with, to shoot with, to varmint with? I could see doing all of that with this one. Do you have a 223 trainer that you built? Please drop a comment. Let's discuss all that and more. And make sure you're subscribed with notifications because you're not going to want to miss the follow-up stories. I'm a happy guy. That concludes this video, and that means it's time to wrap it up. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. Also, make your voice heard. If you have something to say, please drop a comment. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications because you're not going to want to miss the awesome content that is coming up. And finally, flex your reloading pride. You could look great in one of these t-shirts. We've got multiple designs at the Ultimate Reloader store. I'll see you later because I'm off to go shooting.